y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic. Pastor Toby, the water boy, and campus preacher Keith Darrell in the house. Chocolate Knox is still...
Campus Knox.
Campus Knox.
I'm just going to call him Campus
We're going to start messing up names big time. We got a great interview coming up with Doug... let me get this right. Mainwaring, right? There we go.
Mainwaring.
And, you know, I got this joke you got to help me complete here. What do you get when Trump and the IRS and the FBI walk into a bar? I don't know yet, but that's a good joke in the making, okay? All right.
While you're thinking about that, Boniface Woodworking exists for those who enjoy shopping with integrity, who want to buy handmade wooden furniture, gifts, and heirloom items that will last for generations. From dining tables and church pulpits to cigar humidors and everything in between, quality pieces that you can give your children's children. Tie them to their roots, transcend the basic function of whatever they are. Incidentally, in order to have children's children, you have to have a man and a woman get married. Yeah. Anyways, so start voting with your dollars and stop buying cheap crap from people who hate you. Visit bonifacewoodworking.com to see our gallery, learn the story, and submit your order for heirloom quality wood items. We are grateful to have with us on the line right now, Mr. Doug Mainwaring. Is that right? Did I say that right?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, he's being too nice. I said it better.
Unlike what Gabe just said. He's a journalist for LifeSite News, an author, and a marriage, family, and children's rights activist. He's testified before the United States Congress, state legislative bodies, originated and co-authored amicus briefs for the United States Supreme Court, and has been a guest on numerous TV and radio programs, including Cross Politic. Doug and his family live in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, and so we're very grateful to have you on the show tonight. Thank you, Doug, for joining us.
It's great to be here with you guys.
So we found this actually an old article of yours at LifeSite News.
A year old.
We've been working on some of this. With Dave Rubin, buying eggs and renting wombs and claiming to be married to his partner, and seemingly, everybody congratulating him and jumping on board as if this is somehow conservative. In the process of talking about some of these things, we came across your article, and you really start I don't know. You show us where the dead bodies are. I mean, you start naming names of, just how entrenched so much of this homosexuality is in supposedly conservative politicians. You're naming people like J.D. Vance and Dan Crenshaw and other people that you think, wait, what? So how bad is it, Doug? I mean, how in bed is the GOP with the homosexual movement?
I think that pretty much our elite thinkers, our elite politicians have pretty much capitulated across the board. I don't know how much you followed this lately, but pretty much there seems to be an agreement that we're not going to talk about same-sex marriage anymore. It's not a problem.
Wow. And
gays raising kids and obtaining them through surrogacy isn't a problem. But we're all going to join hands and focus on transgenderism. And here's the thing. A decade ago, everybody's saying now, well, transgenderism is absurd. How could anybody be against that? But 10 years ago, same-sex marriage was absurd.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And somehow that no longer elicits any kind of response from conservative academic elites or political leaders. It just gets a shrug of the shoulders, if that. And what we witnessed with Dave Rubin's announcement about having kids is everybody raced to congratulate him. And nobody's criticized.
Right.
Very few people have criticized him. I wrote a piece a week or so ago saying, if you really love your children the way you say you do, you need to dissolve your relationship with your male partner and marry the mother of your child, because that's in your child's best interest.
Yeah. What's at stake here? I mean, why are Republicans kind of capitulating? I mean, I don't think they're the homosexual base is getting him in office. There's not enough votes there to really sway an election for conservatives, at least. Maybe there is for leftists, but what's at stake here? Why are they giving in?
Well, I think that it was just an issue that they all wanted to get over. If you go back and read what went on during the Obergefell case, if you look between the lines, you can see that all the pundits and our representatives on Capitol Hill, they were all relieved that same-sex marriage was no longer an issue. They didn't want to have to deal with it. They didn't want it to be an issue that put a target on their backs during elections.
Courage.
That. And then second of all, here in DC, we have a huge gay population. It's like, I've heard 12% of the population. And a lot of the folks work on Capitol Hill. Fox News is inundated with them. The Supreme Court justices have gay and lesbian folks working on their staff. And some, have been around them. Nobody. If you're the type of person that doesn't want to face personal confrontation with your staff members or your family members, it's just easier to capitulate. Look at Senator Portman from Ohio before Obergefell. He completely changed his mind on protecting marriage when his son came out as gay.
That's right.
That's all it took. That's all it took. And here's the thing, Senator Portman was going in one direction and I was going in the opposite direction at the same time. I went from being an active homosexual to becoming a chaste man and to, restoring my marriage with my wife and becoming, as you mentioned before, a marriage and family and children's rights activist.
Wow.
Because I could see the damage that this was doing. And with the same-sex marriage, before Obergefell, I could tell, and a number of us could tell, that this would be something that would be wielded against religious liberty and would be used to trump the best interests and rights of children. And it's happened. I mean, and then it also, we saw that it was going to unleash the horrible pandemic of transgenderism on society.
Yeah,
it all happened.
Yeah, would you mind sharing a little bit more about your movement from being engaged in homosexuality over to, I believe you mentioned that you're a Roman Catholic, but you're kind of that movement that you've had, because you said you're involved with the Log Cabin Republicans as well as GOP or Geo Proud. Would you mind sharing that story a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Back in '98, my wife and I divorced. Our sons were 2 and 4 years old. I went off to live as a gay man. And, at first it was a feeling of freedom and liberty. And for a few weeks I was happy. But what I noticed is that the whole gay world, there isn't a whole lot of happiness, not permanent happiness there. And men's lives who were married like me, who left their wives almost across the board, I can say this with no trouble, their lives were diminished, not only, economically because of divorce, but socially, you suddenly become a sexual object rather than a full person. And so, there's not a whole lot of really fulfilling life there. But anyway, I wrote my first opinion piece for the Washington Post on same-sex marriage, saying that it needs to be, to be recognized, but it shouldn't be something that's instituted because of judicial action or because of legislatures. It needs to be done by ballot initiatives. The people need to decide. Otherwise, it's not going to be truly accepted. And when I thought more about that after having written it, I realized I couldn't support what I had just asserted publicly.
And what year was this? If you don't mind me asking, what year was this?
This was 2009 or 10. I think it was 9, and end of 2009. And at the time, I was dating the male cousin of the House Majority Leader in Congress, and I realized I'm on the wrong side of history. I'm on the wrong side of science. I'm on the wrong side of nature. And I'm on the wrong side of God, ultimately.
Yeah.
And so, I disentangled myself from the relationship I was in. And I started writing. I co-founded National Capital Tea Party Patriots. And because the Tea Party grew up pretty much in the libertarian world, there's no problem with being gay there. And so I started writing commentaries about the Tea Party movement for the Washington Times, published almost every week for several months. And then when I wrote a piece critical of same-sex marriage, that's when I stopped getting published.
Wow.
So,
even in the Washington Times, right? And they're supposedly the conservative side of things.
I had written a great piece called the Myth of the Same-Sex Marriage Mandate. And normally I'd submit something and within hours or a half day, I would hear back from them, great, we'll publish this tomorrow. It went for weeks without hearing something. So I finally wrote to the editorial director and heard back from him. And he said, Doug, this is really good, but we just can't use it.
Wow.
And I found out a couple weeks later, they announced that they had hired the head of Log Cabin Republicans to be one of their bloggers. And that kind of thing has happened to me time and time again.
So it sounds like, I'd like to hear actually a little bit, just finish the rest of your redemption story. It sounds like you repented of your sins. You got restored back to your wife through all this?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like, well, we've been separated and divorced for a decade at that point. I knew I had to put my marriage back together, but how do you repair the damage that you've done to your spouse?
Wow.
And I knew I really hurt my kids, and frankly, they were living with me at the time because we were teenagers, and that made sense for us to do it that way. But anyway, I really felt a strong compulsion to do something, and I didn't know what to do. So I prayed, and I remember stopping in at a church every single day to kneel down in the back and just pray. And one day, my wife Valerie called and said, Doug, I'm going to have major back surgery, and I'm going to be in the hospital for a long time and then rehab for a long time. And I'm still going to need help after that. Can I move in with you and the boys for just a little while? Could you help me out? And I realized, boy, this is God answering my prayer just far more quickly than I was prepared to do. And anyway, I took a deep breath and I said, how about this? How about we pack up your apartment and you just move in with us? And that was it. She said, okay. And we've been back together again ever since. and at first, it just sort of, all I hoped for was peaceful cohabitation while we could raise our sons together. But it didn't take long for it to become much more than that. And we've been together now for almost a dozen years again, and it's till death do us part.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so one thing that recently we had Denise McAllister on our show recently. I don't know if you know who Denise it was, but she sounds like she kind of has a similar story of you of getting canceled. She was a journalist for Fox and Daily Wire and the Federalist, and in 2018 she got in a social media fight or tiff with her former friend Meghan McCain, and Meghan McCain is. She has a bunch of homosexual friends, and Denise Denise had commented about homosexuality, and basically Meghan McCain, said, "Hey, I had you at my wedding. Why are you doing this?" And then a bunch of her friends came after Denise McAllister and basically attacked her for being anti-homosexual. Well, long story short, Denise goes after one of the her homosexual friends on Twitter pretty hard, pretty harsh. And then as a result of that, Ben Shapiro emailed her and said, I'm going to have to let you go because I need to protect my brand, the Daily Wire, with the homosexual community. And then, of course, you got Dave Rubin at The Blaze. You got, Peter Thiel is, like you mentioned in your article, Peter Thiel's involved in a number of Republican campaigns, like JD.
Spencer Clavin is at the Daily Wire, and his wedding was last week. He married the guy who's the general counsel for the Daily Wire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we're friends with Andrew Clavin, and so there's this homosexuality is got its hooks in all these media houses and the Republican Party. And I just can't think that there's more there that under that hood that we can't see.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just want to maybe tag on to this. I guess my question for you, Doug, is, it seems like a bunch of conservatives can't see why homosexuality is a contradiction to conservatism.
Yeah.
And in shorthand, like you say, sort of, I think there's sort of a libertarian thread that just sort of says, well, let's just leave everybody be. But why? Maybe part of the question is, why is homosexuality such a contradiction to real conservatism?
Well, first of all, I was a libertarian for a while until I realized it's just a bunch of lessons, and they want people to leave them alone, but they don't want to deal with any social issues. They don't want to deal with that kind of confrontation. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But here's the thing, and I every time I write about this, I end up saying this in one way or another, that if there's anything that desperately needs to be conserved today, it's marriage, it's the nuclear family, it's the best interests of children, and their, protecting their rights to a mother and a father. And that's the only way that small government's going to work. Small government's going to work. You can't have small government if you don't have the nuclear family. Look at what's happened when you have divorce, when you have surrogacy and multiple parents for children. The government has to step in to settle every dispute, to make every decision, and it's a mess. And it's as big a mess as it's going to be for what Dave Rubin and his partner David Janet are producing. In that, they have an egg donor and a surrogate. So you have a gestation, or a gestational mom, and the mom who's the source of the child's DNA, and then you have the women that are going to help take care of the child and try to be mom, for a few hours a day. The night nurses, and who knows else. It's so expensive, and the jobs that are entailed with being a mother are split in 8 or 10 different ways, when a wife would do all those things brilliantly and while also establishing the maternal bond that these kids are going to be missing so desperately as they grow up.
Doug,
so that's why you can't have conservatism if you're throwing that, the definition of marriage out the window.
Yeah. Doug, it seems to me that you just kind of brought up kind of the social and maybe civic reasons for why heterosexual marriage is important, and but it seems to me the theological reasons are deeper and more foundational in this, and that's where the Republican Party doesn't want to acknowledge. Because if the Republican Party said that, because God said, ultimately, marriage between a man and a woman is right because God said. Now, of course, socially and it
has all kinds of other ramifications. Yeah.
But the Republican Party ultimately doesn't want to confess the name of Jesus in the Republican Party. They want to kind of get its bland, patriotic God, bow down to this bland, patriotic God, but it's actually the God of the Bible said that this is how it should be, and that's what the conservatives don't want to recognize.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And frankly, I followed the lead of folks who are more experienced talking about this sort of thing when I started speaking out about a decade ago. And so I went out of my way to never bring up God, to never bring up Jesus Christ. And yet, let me tell you, the whole, one of the big things that turned me around was reading the Song of Songs in the Old Testament and realizing that, that marriage, our marriages here are just a precursor to the marriage of Christ and his church. And that's what I want to be part of. I don't want to be part of an abstainer from that. So I found scriptures deeply moving, and I could talk for a long time about that. But anyway, and so finally, a few years ago, I said, forget it. I'm going to speak out, and I started writing about how how important it is to realize that not only is there a social component to homosexuality that needs to be addressed, there's also a demonic component to it as well, and that there's a rejection of the fullness of the life that God offers all men and women, and so that's I started writing about that more and more frequently. Yeah, and I don't care if it offends anybody.
Doug, you mentioned just before we got on that, and it's been alluded to already, you're practicing Catholic, and you said that a lot of what your focus and your work has been with the Catholic Church, and I think you said that's where it's sort of been the worst, or something like that, to that effect. What did you mean by that? I mean, and this is not to dump on the Catholic Church. We have our own problems in the Protestant Church as well. But what are you seeing there, and why do you think it's so bad there?
Oh, well, I don't think I was referring to the Catholic Church, although I would agree with you on that statement. No, I was just saying that Catholic conservative thought leaders have really become like turtles and pulled their head back into their shell when it comes to dealing with homosexuality and same-sex marriage. Yeah.
And if you don't mind,
they're just silent.
Who would some of those individuals
everybody
be?
knows silence is... What's that?
I'm sorry. Who would some of those individuals be? Because in general, when I read like conservative Catholic social thought, I'm always like, man, there's so much more substance here than I feel like oftentimes Protestants offer. So like without selling the farm, I suppose. If you
I'm talking about the silence at this point more than the overt support. Yeah. But you can look at are you familiar with the National Conservatism movement?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I've written extensively about them as well. And I'll actually be at the next one in about 4 weeks down in Miami. But here's the thing. When I realized about a week before the last year's conference in Orlando was to be held, when I realized that there were several Catholic thought leaders who were going to be present there, as well as Dave Rubin, Peter Thiel, and Douglas Murray, all who are men who were either married to other males or in long-term relationships. I wrote to the folks and I said, are you aware of this? Number one. Number two, are you going to withdraw from participating? Because if you go there and don't say anything, it's going to look like you agree with same-sex marriage, and that homosexuality is normal. And if you do go, will you confront them? And, I just sort of laid it on the line, and 4 out of the 6 got back to me. And they all said, oh, yeah, we're aware of this and we're going to do something. They didn't, though. There's no record of them saying anything. And the worst was in the panel where Dave Rubin was featured. Sohrab Ahmari was also on that panel.
Yep, right.
And I'm trying to think of who else. It's there were 2 gays. Also, Douglas Murray was on that, and then Yoram Hosani, the man who
Jewish man
behind the whole. Orthodox.
Yes,
and a couple times somebody drew attention to the elephant in the room, that there were two gay men seated there with the Orthodox Jew and the very conservative Catholic. And neither of the two were willing to say anything. And when somebody brought it up, they just let it slide. And they and I mean, you can go back and watch the video.
So
it was
just for the record, I got an Anthony Esselin book right here on the table. No Apologies: Why Civilization Depends on the Strength of Men. He's one of my favorite papists. he's doing really good work. He's not afraid to speak up.
So Doug, last question here. We got about
Tony Esselin's great.
Yeah, he knows Tony.
Yeah, we got about a minute left here with you. But what should conservatives do? How should we be cleaning house? I mean, should the Republican Party be censoring, conservatives who are for homosexual marriage? Get rid of the log cabin Republicans. I mean, what should happen?
It's like having 100 tumors in your body. How do you remove them all at once? Listen. There's only a few of us that are speaking out in this way. There's me. There's a wonderful woman named Katie Faust, who is the founder of Them Before Us. You should have her on your show. She is the greatest voice for children's rights. She was raised by two moms, but she ended up writing a brief for the Supreme Court in the Obergefell case in support of traditional marriage. And then there's also Jennifer Roback Morse, who doesn't mince words when it comes to these topics, but there are very few others, and because everybody thinks it's a done deal. President Trump said it's a done deal. Right. Almost every politician on Capitol Hill has said it's, just shirked it off and said, yeah, it's a done deal. No point.
We've kind of all accepted kind of the progressive view of history, that it just kind of marches on a certain direction. This idea has become equality, and there's no turning it back.
Yeah, it's just going to happen, and there's no way to.
And what?
Go ahead.
But what may turn the tide is when the current crop of young children born through surrogacy, born through egg or sperm donation, become adults. When they start speaking out about, I'm happy to be alive, but I really don't like the way I came into the world, and being raised by two moms or two dads was a big drag. I wish I had a mom. I wish I had a dad.
Wow.
Good.
Wow. Thank you, Doug. Make sure you download the app. See you at our conference in October. And fight, laugh, and feast. That's it. Knocks it in here. So that's what you get.
This is where Dave and I plan this year's company holidays.
Let's go through the list.
Easter.
Too religious.
St. Patrick's Day?
Too white.
Mother's Day.
Way too cisgendered.
All of your usual holidays have been canceled this year.
But we still have Karl Marx's birthday!
Need a real reason to party? Find a new job at redballoon.work.
The season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. All right, so just stay like this. How am I doing here? So, yeah, you don't like this, huh? What does a Christian education look like when non-Christians are the ones who control the institutions of learning? This is a question that confronted Bishop Augustine of Hippo in North Africa in the 5th century AD. Augustine lived at the twilight of the Roman Empire. He himself had been trained with the best learning that Rome at that time had to offer. He himself actually came through the ranks and taught rhetoric in some of the best schools. And it was then, after he had come of age, that he converted to Christianity, but he wanted to continue the project of education, but this time for Christians. And so he had to confront the question, what does a Christian education look like when the unbelievers control the field? When they control the institutions, when the whole apparatus and curriculum of learning emerge from a pagan environment. And so Augustine wondered, what is it that Christians should jettison? What is it that Christians can embrace? What is it that Christians can adopt but in modified form? These are the questions that Augustine confronted when he sought to educate Christians in an environment when unbelievers dominated the field. A century later, we see a man in the south of Italy named Cassiodorus, who faced a very different educational landscape. He had to ask, what did a Christian education look like in an environment where unbelievers had abandoned the project of education altogether? The infrastructure of learning had entirely eroded. If education was to proceed at all, it had to proceed on the foundation of Christianity. The Christians had to be the ones preserving education. What does a Christian education look like when Christians are the ones forming the institutions, when Christians are the ones organizing the curriculum? Well, these two seasons in the history of education, the season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus, just 100 years apart, were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. We're going to be studying this story. We're going to be going back to the sources. We're going to go back to Augustine. We're going to go back to Cassiodorus. We're going to ask ourselves which of their predicaments most resembles our own. Which can we learn from Augustine's period? What can we learn from Cassiodorus's period? As we confront these questions, we're going to engage these sources, and we invite you to join us here at New St. Andrews College.